Hey everyone, and welcome back. Have you ever wondered what happens when immense power and deep personal affection collide? In ancient China, one man's life story became a legendary cautionary tale about just that. He went from being a simple boatman to the richest man in the empire, all because he captured the heart of an emperor. But as we'll see, in the gilded cages of the imperial palace, love is never simple, and favor is as fleeting as a dream. This is the incredible story of Emperor Wen of Han and his favorite, Tong. Our story begins with Lu Heng, better known as Emperor Wen of Han, who ruled China from 180 to 157 BCE. Now, Emperor Wen wasn't your typical power-hungry monarch. He's remembered as one of the most benevolent and frugal emperors in Chinese history. Imagine this: the ruler of a vast empire wearing plain silk robes, slashing taxes for his people, and living a life of simplicity. Under his leadership, the Han dynasty entered a golden age known as the rule of Wen and Jing. The economy, ravaged by years of war, began to heal. People had enough to eat, crime rates dropped, and a sense of peace settled over the land. It was a time of remarkable prosperity and stability. But beyond his public achievements as a wise ruler, Emperor Wen had a private life that was the subject of endless court gossip. At the center of it all was a young man named Tong. Deng's origins were humble. Some records say he was just a low-ranking official. Others claim he was a boatman who once rowed the emperor across a river. His life changed forever because of a dream. Emperor Wen dreamt he was trying to climb to heaven but couldn't make the final step. Suddenly, a man in a yellow cap pushed him up from behind. When he woke, the emperor searched his palace for the man from his dream and found Tong, who happened to be wearing a yellow cap. From that day on, Tong became inseparable from the emperor. Their bond deepened in a way that both shocked and fascinated the imperial court. One famous and rather graphic story tells of Tong having a painful sore. To the astonishment of everyone, Emperor Wen himself knelt down and personally sucked the pus from the wound to relieve Tong's pain. This act, whether a gesture of extreme compassion or something more, cemented Tong's position. He was no longer just an attendant. He was the emperor's most cherished companion. Following this, Emperor Wen showered Tong with gifts that were beyond anyone's wildest imagination. He received lavish titles, vast estates, and mountains of gold. But the most extraordinary gift of all was the exclusive right to mint his own coins. This was an unprecedented privilege, never granted to anyone before or since in Chinese history. It made Tong astronomically wealthy. It was said that the coins he minted, known as Tong coins, were circulated throughout the empire, and that his personal fortune could rival the entire national treasury. He was, for all intents and purposes, the richest man in China. But what was the true nature of their relationship? This question has intrigued historians for over 2,000 years. Was Tong simply a loyal and fortunate servant, or was he the emperor's lover? Ancient texts, like the records of the grand historian, use the term nancheng, which translates to male favorite or male companion. This term was often used as a subtle, polite way to describe a romantic or intimate relationship between an emperor and a male courtier. While such relationships were officially taboo, they were a surprisingly common, open secret within the walls of the Forbidden City. Many powerful Chinese emperors had their own male favorites, so whether you call it a deep and profound friendship, a calculated political alliance, or a genuine love story, one thing is undeniable. Tong held a special place in the emperor's heart, and with it, he held immense, untouchable power. The crown prince, the future Emperor Jing, saw this and was deeply unsettled. The story goes that when the prince was ill, Emperor Wen suggested he let Tong tend to his sores, just as the emperor had done for Deng. The prince, disgusted and jealous, refused. He saw Tong not as a loyal servant, but as a sycophant who had bewitched his father. A seed of resentment was planted, and it would soon bear bitter fruit. A court fortune teller even warned Tong, "You will die of starvation." Deng laughed it off. "How can I starve?" he asked, "when the emperor has given me a mountain of copper to make my own money?" But the fortune teller's prediction was chillingly accurate. As long as Emperor Wen was alive, Tong was untouchable. He lived a life of luxury, surrounded by wealth and power, always by the emperor's side. But in the precarious world of the imperial court, everything depends on one person's favor, and nothing lasts forever. In 157 BCE, Emperor Wen passed away. The moment the old emperor died, Tong's world came crashing down. The resentful crown prince ascended the throne as Emperor Jing. One of his very first acts was to settle the score with his father's favorite. He had no love for Tong and saw him as a corrupting influence. Immediately, Tong was stripped of all his titles and positions. His properties were confiscated. The private mint that had been the source of his unimaginable wealth was shut down, and all his assets were seized by the state, right down to the last coin. The man who was once richer than a king was left with nothing. The fall from grace was swift, brutal, and absolute. The historical accounts say he was reduced to utter poverty. Some stories even claim he had to rely on the charity of others, begging on the streets just to survive. The fortune teller's prophecy had come true. The man who could mint his own money died of starvation and disgrace, a pathetic end for someone who had flown so close to the sun. His tragic downfall became a powerful lesson passed down through Chinese history. Imperial favor is a double-edged sword, and the higher you rise, the harder you can fall. Today, the story of Tong is preserved in classic Chinese historical texts like the Shigi and the Book of Han. He is remembered as one of China's most famous imperial favorites, a symbol of how personal affection, politics, and power could intertwine in dramatic and often tragic ways. His life forces us to ask timeless questions. What is the true price of power? Can love and loyalty survive in an environment built on ambition and intrigue? And when history is written by the victors, how much of the real human story is lost to time? The tale of Emperor Wen and Tong is more than just a historical anecdote. It's a poignant drama about fortune, favor, and the fragile, fleeting nature of life at the top. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button. And do you wanna forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you wanna miss our next deep dive into history. Let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Until next time, stay curious.